Hello, everyone. My name's Dr. Gina. I am super, super excited to be here with you tonight. First of all, I want this to be very interactive, and I have all kinds of devices so I can keep up with comments and just getting to know you guys. I really want to be able to not just pour into you, but also really answer questions that you have surrounding the college admissions process and so forth. So I definitely can see several of you here. So I would love for you to jump into the comments and just say hello, tell us where you're from, and tell us a little bit about your child or children. Do you have one, two, what grades they're in, those type of things, so we can all support each other. And as I'm going through tonight, I really do work hard to respect your time, just so you're aware of that. And I want to also make sure that there's time to answer any questions. So I will stay here as long as you guys have questions. So that's where we're at for the evening. So again, welcome. I'm super pumped to be here and spend this week with you. And I am going to get started right away, just answering your questions and sharing a little bit about the college admissions process. So you're obviously here because you have a teen that's in high school or late junior high going into high school, and you're thinking through the college admissions process, and you're trying to figure out what those next steps are going to be. So I see Annie here. Hi, Annie. She says she has a daughter who's a junior, so welcome. And from New Hampshire, we have another. Sandra has a junior as well. We have lots of juniors here. I see Karen watching. Amy says, hello, my son is a junior. So we have lots of juniors. So you guys are in the right place, because your students are actually what we now consider rising seniors, meaning that the official college application process for them has started. It's hard to believe that, I know, because you're thinking we haven't even finished our junior year, and that's okay. They've still got time to do that, obviously, but there are things that you have to be really thinking about now in order to just help make that process not so crazy. And we have another junior. Karen says she's from Texas, another Texan there. So welcome, Karen. And Annie, so will you be sharing your presentation at the end of the week? Yes. So Annie, basically what happens is they stay hosted here on Facebook, so you can come back and you can watch them at any point in time. I don't actually officially send out the slides, but the presentations are here, so you can come back and rewatch them multiple times, because I know sometimes it's a lot to take in. I totally get that. Okay, so as we're moving forward as juniors, like I said, I see lots of juniors that are in this group. So we're gonna, kind of talk a lot about the juniors. Now, obviously, there may be some of you guys who are younger and have kids that are younger, and you're going to learn a ton of things that are going to apply to you as well. So let's just jump right into this and get moving. Takes me a minute. So first of all, I want to just share with you a little bit about who I am. Obviously you found me through a Facebook ad or through somebody, sharing my information, but I have been in college admissions for a long time. I have been a high school counselor at a public school, a private school. I have worked in the homeschool sector. I am an independent consultant. So I've kind of been around the gamut. Actually ran a private school as well for quite a few years. So I have worked with kids from all different backgrounds. I have students that are all over the US. So even though I'm Texas based, I definitely am very, very familiar and work with kids all over the US. So regardless of where you're at, I have met counselors and I'm connected with the colleges all over. So you're in good hands. So I just want to share a little bit about my family and myself first. The first picture is me with my amazing husband, who's actually here in the comments, helping me out too, because it's hard to share all this information and make sure I'm hitting all of your questions. So he's helping just make sure I don't miss anything. And you can also see that I'm an author. So I've written several books, but this is my college admissions book. And I will be giving that away throughout the week to lucky winners. So it's just something I love to be able to do, is to give to you guys. And the book is definitely from my heart, and it's, from my experience as a college admissions counselor. I have been recognized and sponsored on quite a few different news medias and podcasts and various things. Below, you will see the pictures of me with my husband, my children, my grandchildren, and this is why I do what I do in a lot of ways. So, not only am I a college admissions expert, but I've also walked this same path with my own kids. So my husband and I are both widows. Unfortunately, we lost our first spouses very young, but we were fortunate enough to find each other and find love a second time, which is pretty amazing. And I'm very excited that, we have joined our journeys together, and we have 6 kids between us. So I always tell everybody we're the modern day Brady Bunch. And that picture in the middle is me with my 3 amazing grandchildren. I need to update that picture. The girls are now, all of the children are a little older now. So I do need to update that picture, but I want to be doing this someday and helping them as they go through their journey, just like I helped my own kids as they went through the college admissions process. So a little bit about my expertise. I'm a member of quite a few different organizations. I'm a member of IECA, HECA, NACAC, NCAG, the Gap Year Association. And not only am I a member, but I also serve on boards. I do presentations and I speak at a lot of the different events for these different organizations. So I feel like it's a really important, as a person who's in this industry, that we are aware and know what's going on in the process, that we are staying connected to the industry. And you want to make sure that whoever you're listening to, that they are aware of what's happening in the college admissions process, and then that they are reputable and that they are not doing things that are unethical. And so for me, you're going to find that that is all true, that I am very ethical, that I do participate in all of the professional organizations, and I visit close to 50 colleges a year on the campuses, meeting with different admissions directors, talking to them both virtually and in person. So depending on what's happening in the world, I'm doing that as well. I have an extensive education. It's based both in education and psychology. I marry those two together to really help our students. And I have 25 years of experience in education. And this is just a little array of a few of the kids that I have been working with this year, and am super excited as they are all getting their decisions and finding those perfect colleges and getting scholarships, which is super exciting for them. Now, again, I've worked with over 500 plus students in just my private practice. That doesn't include all the kids that I worked with over the 25 years. My kids, I'm very proud to say, have walked away with millions of dollars in scholarships. So actually probably multi-million dollars when you add them all together. So one of the things that I really focus on when I help students build out those college lists surrounds that financial piece. And so while there are some families that are totally able and willing to pay whatever the sticker price is for college, they still want to have that lower. They'd like to have some scholarship money to lower that price so that you're not paying full price, all the way to students that need those scholarships to be able to afford to go to school. So building a college list that's going to be right and includes that financial piece. And so I'm really proud of the fact that my students do walk away with lots of scholarships in their pockets, and they've been accepted to over 1,500 colleges. There's no way for me to make a list of all of them, but I can promise you that it definitely spans the gamut of colleges that they've attended, all the way from Ivy to schools that are more accessible for students that maybe struggle academically. I work with kids that are high flyers all the way to kids that have learning differences. So my experience is pretty vast. So I think that's probably enough about me, but this is just a little snippet of the kids from the class of 2021 and just a few of the schools that they chose to go to as their year came to an end. And I know that as your students are beginning to make their next steps, that I, will be excited to see where they end up going. So tonight is all about the changes in college admission. Some of these are new changes. Some of them are things that have been going on, but we're seeing them become more permanent. And we also have just some things that are pretty new to the college admissions process. We definitely want to jump in and share about that. And so I title this to What is Sticking? Now that we've come through the last couple of years and everything in our world, including college admissions, has been turned upside down. So what is it that is going to stick in the college admissions world? What is it that you need to be aware of as your student begins applying to college? Okay. So first, we're going to talk about the 5 trends, and these are the 5 trends, and I'm going to go through them all for sure in a slower manner, and we'll answer questions. So definitely, if you have questions, you can put them in the comments, and then I will absolutely go back and answer those and that type of thing. So moving forward, yeah, I saw Bree said this is her 3rd to head off to college. He's a freshman right now, but needs to transfer schools. Yeah, so we have a lot of kids that we see kids that are transferring, as well as kids that are freshmen in going into their freshman year out of high school. So I'm glad you're here. Okay, so the 5 trends. Applications are surging. There's no question. And top ranked schools and popular universities are seeing not only a huge rise in applications, but have become more competitive than ever before. We see wait lists growing. What does that mean, and how do you navigate that, and how does that come into your plan as you're going through the college process with your student? Test optional. Is this the new norm? Do your kids take a test? Do they not take the test? Is it important? So we're going to talk about that tonight. Demonstrated interest. Now, this is a new thing. In a way, it's been around. We've always talked about demonstrated interest. Colleges always looked at demonstrated interest, but we're going to talk about the new trend and how demonstrated interest does play a bigger part. And then we're going to talk about Uniquely You, which is my personal system that I use with the students, but why Uniquely You is a new trend and how it fits into what colleges are looking for. Okay. So why is college admission so competitive? Number one, we didn't suddenly have a baby boom and we have tens of thousands of more kids applying to college. There are times in history that happens, where we see larger than normal classes of students who are applying to college. But what we've seen in the past few years is not that we have more applying, but that students are applying to more schools. So if you went to college, you probably applied to 3, maybe 4 schools at the most. And, it wasn't a massive process. You went in, you filled out your applications, you submitted, you got accepted, and you went to college. And even if you had a teen or a student that went through this process, just even 10 years ago, you would have gone through that same process. In today's world, what we're seeing is that due to the competitiveness of colleges, students are applying to more schools. Now, it's important that your student has a balanced college list, and we're going to talk about that this week and what that means and how you get it, how you figure that out. But in the meantime, what you do need to know is that it is not uncommon for students to apply to 10 universities or 12 universities. And each application takes a tremendous amount of time to fill out, just to get all the pieces completed that those colleges are wanting, especially the more competitive college. The more competitive, the more hoops your student's going to jump through. So when you're looking at a list, you want to balance it out. I really do not encourage kids to apply to more than 10. I feel like if you have the right college list, 10 schools is more than enough to apply to. But I've had students that come to me that have said they're in the middle of the process and they are applying to 15, 18 schools. And I'm like, that's just way too many in the first place. But it's just the reality. And these students that are not working with counselors or people helping them, and they're not understanding that process, they're throwing their hat in the ring in every college possible, just hoping that it's going to stick somewhere. And that's not the best practice for sure. That's why you're here. So you're going to learn not to do that. But you are going to see that the number of applications that students are applying have increased by a tremendous amount. More students are taking advanced classes. If you look at GPAs today, we don't just have a handful of kids that have a 4.0 and then just that normal progression downward. What we're seeing is that we have thousands and tens of thousands of kids that have a 4.0 and higher. So colleges are having to figure out that, how does that look when you have kids that are taking AP and IB and, dual credit or honors courses, and the schools are weighting all of those GPAs. How do they figure out from that what the student's real GPA is? And there is a process that they use to do that. So that's something else that's making it more competitive, because colleges are having to really look at all of these academics to figure out which students are going to actually be able to be competitive and be successful on their college campuses. Test optional. We're going to talk about that more. I'm going to go into the whole test optional thing, and I'll jump into that as we get down through this. We also are seeing more international students applying, and I'm going to talk about that and the numbers and how that looks. And students are starting earlier. So it is not unusual for students who are wanting to go to these competitive colleges to begin their freshman year planning out their activities, their resumes, all of the things that go into that, just to be able to be competitive. So if you're a junior, you're sitting here thinking, well, then that just that's the end for us. I mean, I guess we're not going to go to college. That's not true. There are thousands of colleges, and you can highlight the things that your student has done, and you can take a breath and know that it's going to be okay. You just have to know how to position your student and help your student be positioned correctly so that they do stand out in the process. But we are seeing that trend of students starting early and early and earlier to really plan out what they're going to do, so that by the time they are sending in their applications, they have a full plan in place. Okay, now let's talk about selectivity. So I talked about that and why things are so selective and what's going on. So public universities in 2021, in the number of applications that were submitted, were up 11% from the previous year. So even our public universities, which are the schools that we have always thought, oh, we're able to, our kids will be able to apply there. They're in state. Not a big deal. We're seeing those numbers become more and more competitive, especially if it is the flagship state school. Those schools, or what we call the public Ivies, those schools are very, very competitive, and the number of applications that are going there are increasing year by year. We also saw in the private sector a 17% increase. Relative to last year, the number of schools that saw a notable change doubled, meaning that if a school had 1,000 applicants this year and the next year they had a thousand, that would make them even. We saw most of the schools that saw the change double. So instead of 1,000, they had 2,000. So that's what we're looking at and seeing those percentages going up. MIT just announced that it received, and this is for this current year, the kids graduating in 2022 for their early action, meaning that this wasn't an early decision binding. We'll talk about all these words later, so don't worry. Meaning they got their applications in early. They received 14,781 applications, and they only accepted 697. That's only 5% of the students that submitted applications early were accepted there. The College Board reported in January of 2022 that there was a 13.2% increase in the number of students applying and choosing schools within the College Board or within the Common App. So when you think about the Common App, there's a large number of schools that are actually have their that are part of that, where your students can go in and apply. So they saw, College Board reported that the Common App saw a huge increase of like 13.2 this year in the number of applications that were being submitted just on that one app, that one particular platform. Okay. Now, also, the competition has increased from international students. I kind of mentioned that, and it's not something you always think about, but we have countries like India and Pakistan and Brazil, which we saw an increase in applications to the tune of 29%. So when you have not only the US kids applying, but you have international kids, and we forget about that. And you've got 29% of students in foreign countries that are wanting to come to school here in the US that are applying for those international spots within the school as well. All of those things make a perfect storm, which causes this process to be more competitive. And so I wanted to just explain, this is a lot of numbers, and I definitely don't want you guys feeling, scared or overwhelmed, because what I will tell you is that there are lots of colleges out there. There are colleges that have spaces, and there are colleges that your student will get into. It's all about finding the right college and having a college list that's right for your student, and not just throwing it out there to stick on the wall, and building out an application that's going to allow them to stand out. And we're going to talk about all of those things this week. So just know that tonight is just the foundation. And as we move forward, I'm going to talk about essays. I'll talk about resumes. I'm going to talk about what colleges are looking for and all of the different things that surround the college process. But I can't get it to all in one night. So I want you to understand this part as we move forward. So what are the real numbers? So 47,000 students applied to Brown, and 47,000 students applied to Brown in 2021, and Harvard got in a record number of 57,000. Sorry, let me get my numbers right. 47 applied to Brown, 57 applied to Harvard for the class of 2025. And the University of Penn saw 56,000. That's 34% over last year. So this is the class of like 2020, the class of 2021 that just graduated and went off to college. That's the numbers that they saw. So it's just really important to understand that when your student is applying, that they are competing against a large number of students that are applying to those same schools. So the schools are going to go through and figure out which students are going to be right for them. And there's a lot that goes into that. So tomorrow night, we're going to talk about what the college is and how they go about determining which students that they're going to admit into their class. Okay, so wait list is growing. So let's talk about the wait list. So I kind of talked about the numbers. You probably are aware of those numbers. It probably doesn't totally surprise you, but I just wanted you to be aware of those. But what are we doing about wait list? What does a wait list mean? So basically what happens is a college will go through, they'll choose which students they're going to accept, and then they will create a wait list. And why are they doing that? It's because they're protecting their yield. What that means is that every college knows that they need X number of students to be able to be on their campus to support their budget. So when you take out the all the emotional factors and look at this from a college perspective, and that it's a business for them. And that's hard because for us it's emotional, but for the college it's a business. Now, not that it's never emotional for them as well, but for the most part, they're looking at budgets. They have certain number of dollars that they can give out. They have rules and regulations they have to follow, and they have, to be able to meet their budget. So therefore, they know how many students they need to have on their campus. So they always accept a certain percentage above the number of seats that they have on the campus. So if a student, let's say a school has 1,000 seats, they're going to maybe accept 1,800 students because they know that not all 1,800 students are going to actually accept those offers. And I'm going to dive in and share some like really big, not really secrets, but things that a lot of people probably don't know about the information that the colleges have and know about your student, and how they track that during their application process to determine what the odds that your student will actually attend their university are. And so that's an important thing that we're going to dive into tomorrow night. But for tonight, just knowing that how the wait list works is that, so then they know 1,800 aren't gonna, or 800 aren't gonna attend. They're gonna have 1,000, but they also want to cover themselves. They want to cover that yield, knowing they have to have 1,000 seats, 1,000 students sitting in those chairs in their school. So what they do from that point is they then choose a wait list. And they'll put a certain number of students on a wait list, and they'll tell you, we'll get back to you. So basically, if that number goes below that 1,000, they begin to pull students off the wait list. Most schools will not tell you what number you are on the wait list. Not all schools number the students on the wait list. They just basically say, we'll get back to you. If you call and ask, they're going to tell you, we can't tell you if you're at the top or the bottom or the middle. So you are going into it completely blind, not knowing where your student falls on the wait list. And there's a whole lot of strategy and other things we have to talk about later that goes around that as to whether you stay on a wait list or not. But I wanted to explain why these wait lists are growing. So in the last 2 years, we've had a lot of students applying to more colleges. So it's brought a lot of confusion. During the pandemic, we had kids that were on campus and not on campus, and lots of different things, parents trying to decide, is it, do I feel comfortable sending my kid to that particular college, and so forth. So what they've done is that they have increased the number of students that they put on their wait list. So typically, maybe they would have, put maybe 400 kids on a wait list. Now they're putting, 1,500. So those wait lists are now inflated, which is difficult because our students think, oh, I might be able to get off that wait list. I may be able to get, into that particular college. And then all of a sudden they find out that's not, they're not, or there was, 1,500 or 2,000 kids on a wait list. And their chances of getting in are very slim. So an example is Brown accepted 34 students out of 1,200 for their class of 2023. That's it. So out of 1,200 kids that were on that list, only 34 came off the list. So, you just have to know going in that these wait lists are growing. It used to be that you would think, oh, if I'm on the wait list, then you had a pretty good chance. I mean, 10, 15 years ago, a wait list was a pretty exciting thing because that meant you were pretty high up and there were only a small number and your chances of getting in were pretty good. But now that's just not necessarily the case. There are still some schools that will keep their wait list low, but we are seeing many more schools growing those wait lists because it comes down to the bottom line. They have to protect their yield. They have to protect their budgets. They have to know that they have students that are going to be in those seats. And what I will tell you is that very rarely do students coming off the wait list get scholarship money. or and so forth. Now they will get their financial aid packages if they're low income, but I'm talking about merit money, things to that effect. Not that they never will, but for the most part, a lot of that money's already been given out. So coming off of a wait list, you just have to know you're going to probably pay higher price for that particular school. Okay. Now on to the next one, test or not to test. And I know this is the big question everybody has. So we have schools that are test optional. We have schools that are test blind. The state of California has just announced that the entire UC system is going to be test blind, meaning they do not accept any test scores. They don't look at test scores. It doesn't matter if you have them or not. They're not going to look at them. And then you have schools that require tests, like in Georgia and some schools in Florida. There are states that are requiring those tests. So the reality is that there are pros and cons to it. I'm going to talk about that, but a lot of it comes down to your college list, where you're applying, and what the guidelines for that area for those schools are. So first of all, in my opinion, when it comes down to taking the standardized test, unless you're going to be applying to like the UC system and nothing else, and you know that the only schools all the schools you're applying to are only test blind, not test optional, test blind, then there's not a reason that you need to take the test. But if you're applying test optional, if you're applying to schools that are test optional, there are reasons that you want to take that test. Okay. First of all, Georgia Tech, this is just their statistics from students last year in the class of 21 who submitted scores versus the ones that didn't. So 37% of the applicants submitted scores that were accepted. 21% of the students admitted did not have test scores. So just know that there was a larger number of students with those test scores admitted over not having them. Now, of course, now Georgia requires these test scores. So that's not even a conversation. If you're applying in Georgia, you're going to have the test. So this was the year that they were test optional. So basically people ask, if I don't take the test, does it hurt my student? It does not hurt your student. They cannot hold it against your student. They still have to look at your student as a complete package. And what they do is they just do not include the scores. So if your student is a really poor test taker, they struggle, they maybe have severe anxiety, something to that effect, then there may be reasons they don't take the test. But you have to know that is going to limit certain schools or remove certain schools as options for you to apply to. So you just have to keep that in mind. So if your child's wanting to go to a school that's requiring them, they're going to have those tests. Otherwise, having a test score really helps your student in other ways. So basically what happens is that when you have a test score and they're going through looking at you in a holistic review, and we're going to talk about holistic review this week as well, so don't worry. But when you're going through that holistic review, trying to determine how I'm going to score your student. If you have a really strong test score, I'm going to put that test score and I'm going to rate that test score, and it's going to increase or help or raise your overall score that I'm giving your application. So while I'm not taking any kind of points away from a student that doesn't have a test score, when you do have a test score, that test score can help your student, especially if they have weaker areas in their application. So just kind of keep that part in mind to know that is a big thing. And if you have those test scores, it can help your student. It also can help in the scholarship area. So a lot of schools have figured out ways to help students be able to take those tests and give them scholarships without the test scores, but those test scores really can increase the scholarship amounts that your students getting, especially big um, those those big merit aid awards. And yes, I saw somebody say, but that was part of the next thing I'm going to talk about is online SATs are coming. Digital testing is going to be coming, and your student is going to have to get used to taking the SAT online. Now, I want to go back before I go into that because people ask ACT versus SAT. There's pros and cons to both. All schools accept both. So, look at the schools that you're applying to just to check their test policy. That's the big thing. No, are they test optional? Are they test blind? Do they accept tests? Do they accept both tests? You're going to find that is, for the most part, correct. Then also know if you're moving forward and you determine which test you're going to take. And there's a lot of information. You can go to the College Board or you can go to the ACT website and you can take practice tests. There's a lot of different things you can do to figure out which test is right for your students. Lots of companies give a practice test first to see which test is better. I do not ever recommend a student going out and just taking a test blindly. I feel like that you're really setting yourself up for disappointment and possibly failure. I mean, some kids are amazing. And if you have one of those kids that can go and take a test and just like that ace it, that's one thing, but that's not the majority of our kids. So you do want them to have some kind of practice, and there's free resources out there, all the way to paid resources. So make sure that they are prepping for this test. I think that's really an important thing. Get those test scores. Know that if you're applying to some of these really elite schools, they're going to require you to send in, if you send in a test score, they're going to require all the test scores. So that means that if you have a really low test score and you just took it blindly, they're going to want to see that test score. So you want to make sure you're prepared before you just go out there throwing things at the wind. And then again, the online test SATs are coming. It's just around the corner, especially sophomores, freshmen. Your kids will absolutely be taking online SAT. ACT has not announced that yet, so we will have to see how that plays out, but typically they follow suit to each other. So just know that online testing is definitely coming. So ask about should a student take both tests? Are there any advantages? So the tests are different, and you need to prepare for both. You need to prep for the test. So if you're prepping for the ACT and then you go out and take the SAT, that doesn't always translate exactly. So for me personally, I feel like it's better to figure out which test your student is going to be good at or do better on, and then move forward with that. I personally like the ACT better. SAT is changing all of this online test. Not only is going to be online, but they're shortening the test, they're changing the test. And so there's always going to be some transition. And whenever they do that, that affects our students. So for me personally, I am advising a lot of my students to practice, take an ACT practice test. If we feel like we can get scores where they need to be, to focus on that, while SAT and the College Board fleshes out this whole online and, the new test and what it's going to look like and all of those type of things. But there's really not an advantage to taking them both. Testing is stressful enough for our kids, so it's really better to find the one they're going to be best at and move forward with that particular one. So hopefully that helps you. And somebody asked, where can I find free resources? So Khan Academy, KHAN Academy, offers free test prep. Your student should be probably as familiar with it. A lot of the high schools and the different teachers will use Khan Academy. There's many resources on there. So absolutely go and check that out, because Khan Academy will give them some online testing resources. Also, you can look at the SAT, the College Board, and the ACT website. Both of them have free resources, practice tests, so forth. And then for me, my favorite book is The Real Essay, The Real ACT. It's just the words the real REAL ACT. That particular book I feel like is a really great book for students to use, and it really helps them with prepping for that college. And I think it's like a $14 book, so it's not free, but it's definitely not extremely expensive as well. Cool. Okay. So moving on from tests, we know we need to take the tests for the most part. But again, you have to look at the overall college strategy. Okay. And that's the important thing. So the big thing that Test Optional has brought, and even now with not just the test optional part, but the competitiveness, the number of applications and everything else, is more essay writing. And like I mentioned a minute ago, the more competitive the college, the more hoops you're going to jump through. Whether that's a state school, a private school, whatever, they're going to have you jump through more hoops. So we have this big, broad gamut. If your student's applying to a school that is maybe not extremely competitive, doesn't mean it's not a great school. It can be a great school. Maybe it's just not as known. They don't get as many applications. You're going to find that they're going to offer things like get your application done by a certain date and you can waive the fee to apply. They're going to say you don't have to submit any essays. Woohoo, that's great. We don't have to submit any essays. So you have that end all the way up to the areas in these schools that are more competitive out there that are going to require your students to jump through more hoops. And that means more essay writing. And these essays have to be done in a way that really shows your student all the way around. So last year we had new essay prompts for the Common App. This year, they are the same. So nothing is changing. We have that we know for the Common App, the essay questions this year, so we're good to go. The COVID essay, so Jessica, for you and everybody else, the COVID essay is a new essay where it says, have you been, I'm probably not going to say this exactly the way the wording is, but it basically says, if you have been affected negatively due to COVID-19, then this is the area where you can write about it. So they give you an opportunity to write about circumstances or situations that have occurred in your life or your family's life that you feel like you need to talk about. Now, not every student needs to do this. So what colleges do know, let's talk about this. They know that activities were canceled. They know that kids did online schooling. They know these big basic things. So they know that families had, kids that were, where families were sick or different things. So those things we don't need to write about because those are the general, like it affected the mass population. But if your student was specifically affected in some way, and there's a lot of things that would just be a conversation we'd want to have to determine, was there something in COVID-19 and that whole situation that really affected your student that we need to write about? This could be from anything from financial stuff to your student maybe dealing with certain emotional things, or maybe your family had to move, or there was a death in the family, things that affected them overall and their performance in school, that type of thing. So what we're looking for is all those things that are going to go back. So maybe a family had a financial need and a student had to start working in order to help provide for the family. Those are the type of things they're looking for in the COVID essay. So the COVID essay is optional and it is not necessary for the majority of students, but there are a small number of students that will want to write this particular essay. Then we have more supplemental essays. We see more and more and more supplemental essays happening every year. These supplemental essays surround things like leadership, diversity, why your major, why you want to attend the university. Sometimes they give you a quote or, maybe they're a statement from one of their alumni, something to that effect, or something that they stand for or believe. And then they ask from there, okay, so with that, how do you fit into this particular statement? What does this mean to you? And these supplemental essays are typically anywhere from 100 words to 650 words and everything in between. And what they're looking for is a different perspective on your student in each one of these essays. So when you hear somebody say, my student has to write an essay, a personal statement, that is the big essay that they write that goes to all the universities. That's one essay that goes everywhere. Typically, okay. So from there, they're going to write that one essay. Then the supplemental essays are essays that they're going to write in addition to that main essay. So let's say they play baseball, they're not going to want to write about baseball in every single solitary essay, because that's not showing a different perspective of a student. So what they're looking for is to really learn about your student. And I'm going to do a whole session on essays. I think it's Thursday night, I dive into essays and what the essays need to look like, what you need to write, what your student needs to think about when they're choosing their topics and so forth. So Thursday night, mark your calendars, we'll talk about essays. And then, like I said, each essay must stand on its own, meaning you're not going to write the same thing over and over in every single solitary essay. And the hard thing is that you may have why do you want to attend XYZ school? Well, there may be 6 different schools that want that. And so each of those essays has to be tailored to that particular school, because they all have different, different things about that particular school that is different from all the other schools. So whether that's their core values or, what they're looking for in a student or what they bring and how their campus runs is not going to be the same. So they're looking for that from each school wants you to specifically focus on their school. So you're not going to be able to copy, those over. Leadership, it depends. It depends on what they're asking. The diversity one, they ask all different kinds. Every single school will have a different diversity question and how they want it approached. And sometimes they can pull pieces from all the different applications, and sometimes they can't. Let's see, this a question was, we assume she would utilize the COVID essay if a student got COVID and was sick, fatigued for months. Yes, that would be a time that you would use the COVID essay for sure. Let's see what this one was. Replying, the essay should be written if COVID caused life-altering. Yes, so thank you to my husband for putting that in there for me. So yes, that is exactly right. So that's what you need to know, is that if it's life altering, that's when you're going to put it in there. So we're going to do, like I said, a whole section on essays. Somebody asked, how often do the essays change? So it depends. So the actual prompts for the Common App, like I said, are out. We know what those are. They usually change them and they stay the same for a few years. So I think we're probably good on the prompts for the Common App for a couple of years. The application, the questions for the supplemental essays, it just depends. Every school can choose whether they're going to change those, and a lot of times they do. So we may know this is what MIT asked this year, or this is what Purdue asked, or this is what Alabama was asking this year. But next year they could ask different questions, and quite frequently they do. They want to, they figure out maybe the questions they asked were not what they were really looking for, and they didn't get the responses, so they want to ask something different. So they do change. Those particular questions can change fairly frequently. Okay, now demonstrated interest. So this is what colleges want to know that you will attend. They want to know that you will attend if you are admitted. Sorry, I'll get this out in a minute. It's a tongue twister there. So colleges want to know that you're going to attend if you're admitted. So like I talked about the yield a minute ago, this is where this part comes into play. Okay. So I'm not going to read all of this to you. You can just kind of see this, but demonstrated interest means that the college is going to be tracking. They want to know, are you on campus? They're going to look at those essays. When you write why you want to attend Carnegie Mellon, they want to know that you really know why you're attending. That's why I said you can't copy and paste those over. What is the mission statement for Carnegie Mellon? It's going to be different than Rhodes College or Trinity University. So you've got to look at all of those different ones and you've got to hone that in. They check, they're able to follow your emails or students' emails to know, are they opening the emails they send to them? Are they responding to them? They consider, have you attended the online events? There is a whole lot of things that they look at in addition to the application to determine if your student is going to attend that university. So what happens, let's kind of take this from that big perspective. I told you that we have 1,700 students apply to one university that's going to pick 600 kids. Okay. So all of those kids apply. They go through, they make it, they got strong academics. So we kind of narrowed some down, but we still got a big group. Then we go to the next section. And so then they start looking at that holistic review. They look at all of the essays, all the things that go into it. And now they're down to still having 1,000 students that are going to take 600 spots. Okay. So where do they go? This is where they go to the demonstrated interest. They've always looked at it, but it always played a small role. It is playing a much bigger role. When I'm talking to college admissions counselors, when I'm on those campuses, they want to know if they admitted, if they gave admission to 20 kids in your school, at your child's school in the last 10 years, and none of those kids applied, none of those kids came to the school, then that makes them question, okay, so what's going to make this kid come when none of the others did? So that's where they start digging in more. It's not going to keep your, just because nobody else attended doesn't mean they're not going to accept your student based on that. But my point is that they're going to dig into that more. They want to know why that you really are vested, that you really want to be on that campus. Because if they're going to give you one of those coveted 600, spots, they want to know that you're going to accept it and that you're going to come to their university. And so just know that this is not new, but it's new in the fact that it is much more prevalent and it is playing a much bigger role in the college process now. Okay. And then the uniquely you. What makes you unique? And this is huge. This is probably, when it comes to that holistic review, you're going to have your whole academic piece, and then you have the rest of the application. And they're looking for authentic kids. They want to know what your student is going to bring to the campus. They want to know that your student is excited about being there, that they have passions, that they have interests. They want the students to come onto their campus, get involved, be friends, do activities, give into the university. That's what makes a student stay at the university, want to come back as an alumni, given to their alumni association and so forth. So if your student doesn't do those things, then the likelihood that your student will actually stay the 4 years becomes less in their eyes. So what they're doing is they want to see and hear your child's unique voice. And a lot of kids do not know. I mean, I say this, and there are adults that are thinking, I don't really even know that about myself. And so this is where, for me, that I dive in really deep with kids. Before we ever even create a college list, before we do anything, we go through and we do various different tests for brain games, fun things, research, diving in, helping your student figure out what it is that makes them unique, how that ties into their major, how that ties into what they want in a college that they're going to attend. And therefore, they're creating much stronger college list, which gives them a greater success of getting in. And so this part is really, really important, because once they understand themselves, then all of those essays, like I was saying, your child will spend 15 hours per application, depending if they're applying to all fairly competitive schools. They have a lot of hours they're going to be writing essays, and that time can be, narrowed down a lot when they know what makes them unique, what makes them tick, and what makes them stand out. And if you ask most students, most teens, they don't know that. And, I'm not surprised. I mean, I don't know that I knew that when I was their age. So it's not an unusual thing, but it's just a new piece in that when our kids are going in and they're not having that guidance and they're going out just throwing, out lists, they're just picking random things that they want to, talk about in essays, and none of it ties together. Their whole application should be cohesive. It should show them in the best light, what makes them unique, what makes them stand out, how their academics tie into their, activities, and tie into their major, and tie into the school, and why they're going to that school. And I know it sounds like right now, like, oh, I don't think that my child knows that. And that's why this part is so important, to, really help them understand as they're moving forward. So, let's see. What about joining schools informal Facebook page for parents? Yes, absolutely. You want to make sure that they have a social media presence. And let me share my next screen. Actually talks about that. The things that, well, we'll get to that part in a minute. But what things that are going on? Campus life is definitely, other than those 5 things I talked about. We have more online classes. There are vaccine requirements at some schools. You're going to want to make sure that you're checking that out, and you're going to increase that college cost. But you're going to see an increase in college costs. That's why we want to get more scholarships. That's why you want to tie all these things together, so that you can make sure that you are able to get more money to lower that cost of college. So into questions, and I'm going to go back and answer. So, back to her question about the Facebook. So tomorrow I will jump into this a lot more, but your student needs to have a social presence. And I know that some kids aren't on all social media, and it's okay. They don't need to be on every social media, but social media can be a positive and a negative in their application process. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. But yes, following on Twitter, various things, various social, social sites is going to be an important thing. And like I said, they need to do the ones they're comfortable with, but it needs to be the student, not the parents. So, I mean, it's fine for you as parents, definitely, to join those Facebook pages. I'm not telling you not to, but the colleges are not tracing your demonstrated interest. They're following your students' demonstrated interest. So that's the thing to keep in mind. I was asked about an example of Common App. I'm not really going to jump in. I will talk about the Common App and the coalition and the different types, but you're not going to see an example of the full Common App. And we just don't have time to do that. But I do share with you and talk about that process later in the week. I think that's on Friday, where we talk through all of the pieces of the application. So let's see, what other ones do we have? Here's another one. My high school sophomore follows her top 10 schools on Instagram, and she has attended the virtual open houses. That's great. And that's the big thing. Every call, I will say this, with the new shift in the pandemic and everything, what it did do is open up a lot of doors for our students to attend virtual events, and the colleges do track that. And so as early as they want to, they can start getting on those virtual events and going in, talking to those counselors, checking them out, making sure that they're letting them know. But it's also good to be on the campus, but start, if they can't, a virtual event is better than not being on a campus at all. So that's an important thing to keep in mind as well. And so basically, what I'm kind of just sharing with you here tonight, this is the foundation. It is competitive. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's not the way it was, even 5 years ago. Things have changed. We do see the process being more competitive, But at the same time, there are things that your student can do and should do that will help them stand out in the process. Every year, there are thousands of kids that get into these competitive colleges. Your student can be one of those. They do need to be aware that they're probably going to get some no's. If they're applying to all schools that are, you know, very competitive, less than 10% acceptance rate, even less than 20% acceptance rate, even if they're valedictorian, have, resumes and everything that blows them out of the water. They, let's say they're the entire package, they have everything. There's still a chance that they're going to not get accepted. We used to have three categories. We would say they're safe, fit, and reach schools. Now we have wild cards. And a wild card is just what it is. It's a school that you may, it may be a school that you have a chance at getting into, but the likelihood can be, very slim, even for the most competitive students. So, helping and talking to your student early about the process and helping them understand, you might get some no's, but if a door closes, it just wasn't the right school. I don't think that, I feel like with our kids these days, there's so much pressure on them. I have a real heavy heart for our kids and their mental health at times and all the things they're going through. And they're starting so early at having to really prepare for this next process, and they put a lot of pressure on themselves, and I hate that part of it. And so I feel bad for our students when they're dealing with that part. So what I say is that, as parents, the best thing you can do is take the pressure off as much as you can. There will be disappointments, there will be no's along the way, but they're going to have no's in life. So it's just kind of helping them navigate that process and helping them understand that it might be a no, but it just means it wasn't the right campus. And just like some schools may deny your student may get 20, well, not 20 because they're not applying to 20, but maybe they get 8 acceptance letters. They're not going to be able to attend 8 schools. So they get to say no to 7 of those schools. So it's just part of the process, and helping them kind of understand that will help them navigate that process better. So I hope that answers questions. So are there any other questions? I want to make sure that I'm not missing anything from you guys. I hope this was helpful. Let me know in the chat if this has been helpful to you, if it's given you a better understanding of the process. Tomorrow night, we're going to jump in and talk about how colleges make the decision. So we're going to talk about what that looks like, what they're looking for in the applications, and what you need to know to help your student as they're moving forward in this process. So that's going to be tomorrow night. Wednesday night, I dive into everything about the Uniquely You. I'm going to help you understand how your student can stand out, how they can find what makes them unique, and how they can use that to their advantage in the process. Thursday night, we are going to go through essays, resumes, all like mainly essays. That's going to be the big thing on Thursday night, is really talking about those essays, what colleges are looking for. And Friday is more of an overall walk through the resumes, like what you're going to find, the common apps, the different applications, the different understanding, the different decisions, and that type of thing. So it's kind of taking you through a progression. Just so you know, I'll hit all of those high points. So definitely keep your questions and make sure that you're including them. Now, I do want to share that I love to give away prizes, and I love to give away my book. And that's an important thing. I love to share, and I send this out free, and I do drawings. So in order to get in the drawings, what you need to do is there are different things that allow your name to get on the drawing board. So one, when I welcomed you to the post, go in and put in your name. I already have a few of you on the board. And tomorrow night, I'll be giving away my first book. So make sure that you go in and say hello, introduce yourself. there's a homework tab in the Facebook group. Now, if you're not on Facebook and you're watching on YouTube or a different format and you're not on Facebook, then just email me. Just send me an email at gina@educationprepcenters.com and answer the homework. And that's the most important thing that you can do, is to answer the question. And so tonight's homework was just answering a simple question of what were some of your biggest takeaways from, you know, tonight. What was the things that you learned, that you took away, that you're going to be able to use in that process? So it's simple. So if you're not on Facebook, just send me an email. If you're on Facebook, go in and make that post. And then on Thursday night, I have a couple of different programs. Obviously, you can work with me in a lot of different ways if that's what you want to do moving forward. If not, it's not a big deal. I do this because I want to pour into as many families as I can. So just know that's why I'm doing this. But I will share on Thursday night a little bit about how you can work with me. But I have a program called Purposeful Parent. It's a year-long program, and it's for the parents to come in, and every month we meet and we go through and we talk about whatever is relevant and answer questions about the college process. So one person will win a year free inside a Purposeful Parent on Thursday night. So you want to make sure that you're getting your homework in so you get your name on the board, so that you can be part of that Purposeful Parent program and possibly win that. So that's how you get your name on the board and so forth. So I had one more question come in. It said, if a parent went to a school student is applying to, does that improve the chances or odds of getting into that school? So the simple answer to that question is it depends. So some schools look at demonstrated interest a lot more than others. So you have some schools that are going to look at that demonstrated interest. Some, it's not going to matter. They're not going to consider that. And right now we actually have we have several different legal things going on within that are lawsuits and legislation that's being brought before various judges. And one of those surrounds around legacy and families that have students that, whose parents went to a particular school. And so the colleges are fighting it because they want to be able to consider that. But we have legislators and other people that are bringing suits against it, saying that it's not a fair way to, consider students. And so right now it's all in legislation. So we'll see how that all shakes out in the next year or two, or however long it takes them to get through. But right now we have some schools that do consider it. Some of the, obviously, schools like Harvard, the Ivies, they're going to consider it. Big state universities, even big private universities that have a lot of students that are applying, are not going to consider it as much. Obviously, if you're a big donor and you have your name on a building, that's going to increase your child's chances of getting in, unfortunately or fortunately. That's just the way it works as far as that. But and if you're really involved in the alumni association, that can, at some schools, that can weigh in. But for the most part, legacy and that part of it is really going away. I would say that there are fewer schools that consider it than there are that don't. So depends on the school and how competitive and so forth that is. So hopefully that answers your question. So make sure we don't have any more. I don't see any other questions. So I saw that we had said yes. Thank you. Very informative. I'm glad it was informative. I'm super excited, and I hope you had a great evening. Like I said, tomorrow night, I'm going to walk you through how colleges make their decisions. So what they're looking for in the application process specifically, and how that, knowing that can help your student create an application that's going to help them stand out. So I'm definitely getting lots of thank yous from Debbie and Sandra and Carolyn and Annie. Thank you guys. It's been great having you all here, and Amy. And jump into the Facebook, ask questions. make posts. I want to be interactive. I'm here all week for you guys. So have a wonderful evening, and I will see you all tomorrow night. Okay.